Good evening. Is my mic on? Hey, there you go. Good evening. Welcome and thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm Rick Bridges and I'm honored to be your HOA president for 2023. Welcome to Mount Dora's Community Building, which is now also known as the Mount Dora Music Hall. We might have confused some of our guests by using the name Music Hall, but online that is what it's called now, and they're in the process of transitioning to that name. We're here tonight because the HOA Board of Directors and the AdHoc Golf Committee felt that it was appropriate to provide Ccmd residents with an update of the progress and research the AdHoc Golf Committee members have made since the committee was created by the HOA Board in April of 2022. Tonight's meeting was duly noticed. The meeting notice was posted on the Country Club's website. The meeting notice was posted at the Bob Foster Center on the building's exterior bulletin board. The meeting notice was sent to postcards via the U.S. Postal Service to all homeowners if they got there. Periodic email with a save the date notice of tonight's meeting was sent to residents who have previously agreed to receive emails sent from our HOA webmasters. The official agenda of tonight's meeting was posted on the Country Club's website on Tuesday evening, August 29th. These notices satisfy the requirements by the state of Florida's Sunshine Law and by the HOA's governing documents that all committee meetings must be posted 48 hours in advance of the meeting. For the purpose of tonight's meeting, this meeting will be purely an informational meeting. There will not be any vote or decision made on any subject matter presented tonight. This meeting is being audio and video recorded and will be available on the Country Club's YouTube web channel tomorrow morning or afternoon, we're not sure when, for your review once again, just as the meeting in the parking lot of the clubhouse on March 14th, 2022 was. An email will be sent to our residents who have agreed to receive emails from our HOA webmasters with information on how to access the video recording of tonight's meeting via the internet. Also, there will be a notice on our website under the topic of news with instructions on how to access the video recording on the internet. If there are any comments or questions from the audience tonight when the opportunity is available, please remember that this meeting is being recorded. We urge everyone to please be professional and courteous with your comments and questions. Our AdHoc Golf Committee with 14 members was created by the HOA Board in April of 2022. The committee members felt there were two challenges that our community was faced with. With that, the committee decided to divide themselves into two teams with two different and important challenges. These challenges were as follows. Team A, to find a qualified buyer to purchase and operate the golf course as it is today, and to survey the Ccmd homeowners to determine their level of support of the Country Club. Team B's challenge was to find any and all obstacles or reasons that could or would stop any and all future development on the golf course property. At this time, I would like to introduce the 14 members that make up the AdHoc Golf Committee. I'll ask them to stand and identify themselves when I call their names. Team A, Barry Crosby. Denise Hedrick. Curtis Regroot. Unfortunately, Curtis couldn't be here. He's out of town. John Tomlinson. Kurt Umholtz. Greg Vogel. Team B, Hank Borg. Hank is currently out of town, but he's called in a number of times to check on things. Don Brandt. Ken Groves. He was out at the registration desk. Frank Iaquinto. Bill Wagner, he's in the back. He greeted you as you came in. And myself, Rick Bridges. And we had another member, Chuck Schneider, was also on the team, but recently passed away. The committee appreciates the valuable contribution that Chuck made during his time serving on the committee. And Rich had him calling city council every Monday morning, planning and zoning every Monday morning to find out, is there any development on the golf course yet, or any plans? So he did a fabulous job for us. Sandy Groves was is the committee's scribe. Paul Blankenship is our HOA vice president and the HOA board liaison to the AdHoc Golf Committee. At this time, I'd like to introduce the 2023 Ccmd HOA Board of Directors. I'll ask them to stand and identify themselves when I call their names. They are as follows: Paul Blankenship, Vice President. Bill Orton, Second Vice President. Barry Crosby, the money man. Linda Kemp is our secretary, and she is currently out of the country. How about a round of applause for the hundreds of hours these teams have put into research and combing through City of Mount Dora records. And believe me, they spent hundreds of hours combing through the City of Mount Dora records, along with the incredible support that the city staff has offered the Country Club of Mount Dora. I would also like to introduce our Community Association Manager, Jake Chamness, and our Administrative Assistant, Cheryl Shepard. She may still be outside. They are located in our Bob Foster Center, and they do a fabulous job to support our residents, our HOA board, our committee members, and our chairs. Tonight's meeting of the AdHoc Committee is intended to provide you with the progress that the committee has made to demonstrate why further home site development should not be allowed in the Country Club of Mount Dora, following the presentation by Mr. Randy Morris, representing the Country Club owner, Mrs. Diane Della Russo. If you will remember, the meeting that Mr. Morris presided over was the meeting of the residents that was held in the parking lot of the Country Club clubhouse on March 14th, 2022, to advise the homeowners of a plan to develop home sites in the Country Club. By a show of hands, how many of you attended that March 14th, 2022 meeting? That's quite a few. Okay, let's try this. By a show of hands, how many of you did not live in Ccmd in 2022? I can't see. Okay, 3, 4, 5. Okay, all right. Well, we welcome the new homeowners, and thankfully the remaining homeowners decided to stay around. So let's move fast forward to tonight. 568 days since March 14th, 2022 meeting at the club. Tonight, you will see a presentation by Rich Hurley, the chairman of the AdHoc Golf Committee, that will look back 568 days ago as to what the status of the country club, the golf course, and the amenities were on March 14th, 2022. He will also show you the plans that were presented to the residents for the possible development of 230 additional home sites on the golf course property. We will learn about the research that was done about the AdHoc Golf Committee, that could stop the development of the golf course. Additionally, we will learn what has been done to find a buyer to purchase the course and maintain it as a golf course with its present amenities, and perhaps even enhance the golf course and parts of the clubhouse. Following Rich's presentation, we will have a presentation by Greg Kristovich of Kristovich and Associates, who will provide you with an overview of his company's due diligence study as it relates to the current status of the Ccmd golf course and the associated amenities. I want to mention that I invited our Mayor, Chrissy Stile, to attend our meeting to also learn about our AdHoc Committee's research program progress. After many conversations, that I and other members of the committee have had with the mayor, she is well aware of the Ad Hoc Golf Committee's existence and its purpose. Unfortunately, she had a previously scheduled meeting with the City Council. The mayor sends her regrets for not being able to attend tonight, but she also sends her appreciation to the residents of the Country Club for their support of the City of Mount Dora through your tax dollars, your support of the downtown merchants, and all of the businesses in Mount Dora. Our District 2 City Councilman, Cal Rawson, also sends his regrets for not being able to join us. He is not only our City Councilman for the Country Club of Mount Dora, but also a longtime resident of Ccmd. He is also attending the same meeting as the mayor. At this time, I would appreciate it if you would place all of your electronic devices on silent mode in respect of our presenters and the guests seated around you in the auditorium. If you should have any questions as the presenters share their presentations and information with you, please hold them until the end of the meeting. There will be a microphone at the end of the aisle near the stage for you to ask your question and make your comment. Questions and comments will be limited to 3 minutes each, and we have a timer. If we do not have a factual answer to your questions, we will advise you of that. So thank you, and at this time I'd like to ask Mr. Rich Hurley to come forward and make his presentation.
Thank you, Rick. Rick, could we bring up the poster board?
Yes.
That is one of the poster boards that's out front that was presented by Randy Morris, the representative from the golf group, and that was presented on the 22nd of March. Because this is a formal meeting of the Ad Hoc Golf Committee, I'd like to call the meeting to order. And we do have a quorum. And the first order of business would be approving the minutes from the March 9th, 2023 meeting. Our scribe, Sandy Groves, sent out these minutes by electronic today. Everybody have a chance to look at them?
Chair, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented for the March 9th.
Yeah. Yeah, Barry Crosby made a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
Yes,
Second. All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Those minutes are approved. So thank you. Nice to see a good crowd here today. I think it's important that we have two groups here. One that witnessed and sat in the parking lot on the 22nd of March, and then we do have a number of homeowners that have moved into the community since that time, so this will be new to them. So with that, the first slide up here, 827 homes, 35-year-old community. We do have one lonely lot in Wingate. Anybody that plays golf on maybe your second or your third shot, you might end up in that lot. It's an awkward lot. It's really not a lot that's conducive to building a house that's consistent with that neighborhood. So for all intents and purposes, we have a built-out community. Trying to advance the, there we go. So what we have a visual aid up here, and I'll talk about that in a minute. For those that came into the room, we had 3 of these out there. This is a blow-up of the presentation. The golf group had intentions to build 230 homes in the community. So this clicker here doesn't seem, there we go. Our AV guy there, this clicker is... The left button or the right button? Let me back up here. There we go. Anybody that's looked around at communities in the area would recognize and certainly know from paying dues in our community that we certainly have low HOA dues. We have a beautiful community, well maintained, and certainly something that I think all of us feel is very desirable. This clicker is not responsive. For those that have been in the community for a while that know that at our annual meetings, Mr. Delarusso would show up, and one of the messages that he always provided was that he needed more membership. And certainly with the Friends being organized, with community action, that we increased the membership to over 500, and it's over 500 today. So that's a very important aspect to the community. During the COVID period, Mr. Delarusso caught COVID and complications from COVID. He passed away in June of 2021. And with that, he was the managing director of the golf group. His wife, Diane Delarusso, became the owner of the golf group and the owner of the golf facility. I call it shock and awe because anybody that was there, we were really caught unaware. Everything was going fine, we thought, until this evening when there was a presentation that was made by Randy Morris, and he's one of the golf group's representatives, and he made the pitch that they were going to close the golf course within a month. So for those that were there, I didn't have a picture of the podium. The podium was situated right underneath the awning, and that's where Mr. Morris stood, and there was over 200 people that were sitting in the parking lot that heard this presentation. He actually made that statement that he was going to close the golf course in 30 days. And it was quite a scene there because there was some in the audience that were imbibing a little bit too much. And for a while there, I didn't know if Randy Morris was going to make it out of the community. I looked in the dictionary. I wanted to have appropriate words, and I think these two words really fit it. He was full of bluster and bravado. And one of the individuals, or maybe a couple of them, that imbibed a little too much, I thought somebody was going to end up on the floor. And I think it was a good thing because it wouldn't have looked good for our community, and it certainly wouldn't have been good for Mr. Morris. Now, if you want to watch that, that is still on YouTube. So tonight is on YouTube, and there's the reference to it. So you can find that 2-hour session where Mr. Morris made his presentation and where there was an awful lot of questions and not many answers, or certainly not the answers that we were looking for. So, with that, what a sobering thing that there would be homes that would be on the fairways, the greens, and the tees of this beautiful community. So with that, if you didn't have a chance to look at the poster boards, there's 2 of them still out in the lobby. It's interesting. People would say, well, I'm from Laurel Ridge and there's going to be houses in my backyard. Well, I'm in Greenbrier, they're going to be in my backyard. And if I live in Andover and Spring Creek, they're going to be in my backyard, and none of the communities escape because Hunter's Green would have homes, and Edgewater, and even up front where the fountain is up front, they were going to fill in that beautiful lake with our large fountain input houses there. So if you didn't have a chance to look at it, this was the plan. That was the plan that was presented. I still don't know what the logic was for that, because certainly scaring us really did one thing. It motivated us, because none of us want to have our community disrupted with construction in houses and views and everything that we have. And I think we all agree that we have a beautiful community. So if that was to occur, there would have been 27% increase in homes in our community. And you know, I do hear from people say, well, I live back in the Saints and St. Ives and St. Andrews, and that really wouldn't affect me. But that's not true, because when you talk about large-scale construction, you're disrupting the water. There's times when sanitary sewers would be turned off. You would have dust, you would have debris, you would have construction noise, and you would have a mess, even if you live down in the last few homes of St. Andrews and St. Ives. This was a statement that was made, and I'll never forget this. We have developers lined up that will pay us $10 to $12 million to build houses on the golf course. There were people that thought it was a done deal. In fact, my neighbor right across the street, he went out and put his house on the market the next day. He was out of here. And I know that there was others that did the same thing. And I think there was other people that did sit back, think it over, reason it over, and realize that it wasn't a done deal. You know, golf courses are very different than many other businesses. If you own a restaurant, if you close that restaurant and you clean the kitchen and you do a good, thorough job, you can open that restaurant in 10 years and be functioning in a short period of time. With a golf course, you close that golf course for just 4 to 6 weeks, and you got to start all over again. That means it would cost $3 to $4 million to resuscitate a golf course that is closed even a few months. That golf course, when it's closed, you would have weeds knee-high so quick it wouldn't be funny. Where the greens are, they would be weeds just as well. When we talk about, you know, the construction and security and welfare concerns, these are really important items to keep in mind when we, you know, recognize the threat that was upon us at that time. The dump trucks, the noise, the dust, the drinking water disruption, that thing would go on for years. And it's not like a lot of the communities that you see built, where they built in one section at a time. If this was to happen in our community, it would be all over the place. It would be up front, it'd be in the back, it'd be in the middle, it'd be all over, and the disruption would be there. As far as housing values, you know, I've had some people say, well, how do you know it would drop by 25%? Well, certainly you could have a viewpoint from a realtor, but you just think about it, that if the timing was wrong for you, if you wanted to sell your house when you had noise and debris and destruction going on when somebody was coming to look at your house, you certainly, your price would be affected by that. Sounds like we're lucky to be inside with that rain outside. Let's hope when it's over, we can walk to our cars. So this is a real situation that I think all of us can appreciate. Now, in our community, we are what's called a PUD, a Planned Unit Development. This is an ordinance that was approved and signed by the city of Mount Dora in the year 2004. So if somebody wanted to bust our PUD and break our PUD, they would have to come to the city planning and zoning, and they would have to make a pitch and show their plans, what they are going to do, and it would have to be approved first by the planning and zoning, and then it would have to go before the city council for their approval. And that would be breaking up our PUD to build houses, additional houses. Now, from our HOA standpoint, if we were to fight this, which we would, the HOA board has been very strong, it would take money and time, legal advice, legal action to fight this, to make sure that our PUD stayed intact to what it is today. Now let's talk a little bit about this committee. As Rick stated, that in April, our board decided to put together this AdHoc golf committee. There's 14 members, as Rick identified. Team A would focus on identifying a qualified buyer. Now, what does that mean? That could be an individual that wants to buy the golf course. If anybody out in the audience would like to buy the golf course. It could be a golf management company. There are many companies in the United States that their primary business is to either own, lease, or manage golf courses. That's their primary interest. That's what they want to do. And there are many companies out there. Also, the thought has come up, could the HOA buy the golf course? That's a possibility. So Team A studied all of these options, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the future. Team B wanted to focus on issues that relate to stopping the developer for building additional houses. And so we're going to talk about that. Our committee is very diverse. We have bankers and brokers, a bank president, a high-ranking or multiple high-ranking corporate executives, corporate division managers, a financial specialist, CPA, a high-tech engineer, a real estate broker, a golf course expert, and 3 college professors with PhDs. So we do have a diverse group with a lot of talent, a lot of education, that we have been working very well together over the last 15 months. Our mission has been very consistent. Stop any all future housing development in Ccmd and identify a buyer for the golf course to operate it as a golf course. And most importantly, none of us want to go through this again. We want a deed restriction placed on the golf course so that no housing would be built in the future. So in other words, when the transaction takes place, that the golf group sells the golf course, that the new owner would agree to placing within the deed a restriction that would keep it as a golf course or open spaces for a long, long period of time. So we had decisions to make right off the bat. There were other communities that the golf group, they own golf courses in other communities where those communities acted very differently. They made a lot of noise, they called a lot of names, they put articles in newspapers, they threatened the owner, they canceled their Delaware yearly contract. We didn't do that. We took the opposite approach. We've been low-key, non-confrontational. Very fortunate that one of the members of our team, John Tomlinson, his long-time attorney is the same attorney that Mrs. Delarusso uses. In addition to that, John has had a constant communication contact with Mrs. Delarusso, very friendly and cordial over the phone, and with the golf group's two main advisors. John has had very cordial relations and discussions with her advisors over the 15 months. So we've had constant contact with them, and our approach, as I mentioned, has been low-key for a purpose. We feel there's really no reason to make this a boxing match. So our committee's been meeting. We meet in small, non-quorum research teams, discovery teams, planning for the last 15 months. One of the first things we did is we went to the city of Mount Dora and we asked for a FOIA request on all the information pertaining to the PUD that was approved. Actually, it goes back to the 1990s when the developer was putting it together. There was a lot of revisions to the PUD, and the final PUD was signed off in 2004. We had our researchers come into the town, Frank Iaquinto and Bill Wagner and Ken Groves, spent hours and hours looking through papers and learning as much as they can about how our community was put together. A lot of that pertained to environmental, some of it was legal. So we've had 16 Friday email blasts. We want to notify the community what's going on. Denise Hedrick, working with Rick Bridges, on Fridays they work to put out email blasts. As far as what Rick mentioned, Chuck Snyder, before he passed away, he was calling the first Monday of every month asking if anything was submitted to the city as far as developmental plans, from plans like that or like what we had up here, and he would call every Monday, and that's when every Monday of the month is when the city would accept new development plans. This committee has met in a full fashion like we are tonight 6 times, and all of these meetings were posted. We had homeowners at them, and the minutes of every meeting is in the archives, and you're more than welcome to look at those archived minutes that are on our website. If you have trouble finding them, our community manager, Jake, will help you with that. I wonder if that's Randy Morris out there. Since March 14th, we've had 14 board meetings, and with those board meetings, there was always a report from our committee directly to the board, so they would know what is going on. If you want to look at the board meetings, they are archived, and you could see those reports for each month. I think there's very few people that have done that, and we encourage you to do that because you will see how this, the sequence of events, how things have followed and gone from one phase to the next. So we would encourage that if you have the interest and the time, those minutes are available. For each of our meetings, as I said, those are archived, and we'd like you to look at them if so interested. So let's talk about where we live and what makes our community interesting, and also provides an environmental situation that is both somewhat rare, interesting, and unique, all in the same package. What you're looking at there is what we call the Wolf Branch. The Wolf Branch is that little creek. When you're in our community and you drive past the golf course parking lot, you go off over the bridge and you come to the halfway house and the water range. That little bridge there, underneath that is the Wolf Branch Creek. See if my pointer doesn't work there. Let me see if this pointer does. There we go. So our community is right up here. And when you look at the Wolf Branch, it only goes 3.5 miles from start to finish. All the water from that little creek goes into a sinkhole. And a lot of times when we think of a sinkhole, we think of a hole as big as this building. But that's not true in the Wolf Branch sink. The sinkhole is about this size. So stormwater management is critical. Stormwater management is critical in our community. And when our community was engineered back in the early 90s, they engineered and built 19 stormwater retention ponds. All the water that comes off your roof, that goes into the street, that goes into the storm sewers, goes into one of the 19 ponds. All these ponds are interconnected, and by gravity flow, the water goes from pond to pond to pond into the Wolf Branch. So what does this accommodate? It keeps our community from flooding, because these are retention ponds that were built specifically for the 827 homes with the surface area that we have on the streets within our communities. Everything was engineered. So the water goes from pond to pond. We are actually in a little bit of a bowl. 5.25 square miles is this Wolf Branch basin. So all the water goes into that creek. This is the flyover on 46. When you come over and go over the 441 flyover to 46, you will go by, you will see water on the left and the right. That is the Wolf Branch Creek, and the sink is down here. There's another critical thing, is flooding on Route 46. Our town engineer here, George Merrick, estimates that if we were to have a 25-year storm, these are his estimates, that road could be underwater for up to 3 weeks, 4 to 5 foot of water. And that's a hurricane evacuation route. So we have multiple things going on here. We have one, the protection of the Wolf Branch sink, because that water goes into the Floridan aquifer, which is the source of our drinking water. So we certainly don't want to contaminate that, and I don't think anybody from the city or the state wants to contaminate that. Also for flood control not only in our community, but also flooding on Route 46. And I think it's only a matter of time before we get hit with a big rain event, a 25, 50-year, 100-year storm, and that road is going to be flooded. So we live in a special place for many reasons, and I think just fortunate for us that we have a a critical environmental situation here that needs to be protected. Of those 19 ponds, 15 of them are maintained by the HOA. So the HOA owns the ponds in 15 areas. The only ponds that the golf course own would be the golf course driving range pond, the pond between holes 1 and 9 up by the clubhouse, and the ponds up front where the fountain is, with the exception, one of the things we found in our research is the HOA owns a 10 by 10 foot area around that large fountain in the pond, that the golf course owns the rest of the pond, but the HOA owns that 10-foot area. So the plan that I showed you where they wanted to fill that in, that would be a very pricey 10 by 10 foot area. Another thing about our ponds is that you think about this, in ecology and with the way nature works, there is a cleansing and a degrading of chemicals as they go from the streets into the sewers, into the ponds. Many of the chemicals would be biodegraded, and by the time they got to the Wolf Branch and then into the sink, they would not contaminate the sink. So this little aquifer, this little 3.5 mile creek is really important to our defense, and we have worked really hard, working along with the city officials, to recognize this Wolf Branch as being something that needs to be protected. One of the things that we did as a committee, that we did some research and we identified a professional, Ron Hart. He's a local. He used to work for the Lake County Water Authority. He certainly knows the Wolf Branch Creek. He knows a lot about the environment and a lot about the history of the area and how communities like this, pubs, were put together. Our committee went to the HOA board, asked for funding. They provided funds of $4,500 for Ron Hart to put together this 16-page report that's titled Evaluation of the Proposed Developmental Impacts to the Country Club of Mount Dora and the Wolf Branch Creek Basin. That's the 5.25 square mile basin where all the water goes into the creek. This report is available if somebody would like to read it. Jake, our community manager, has a copy down at the Foster Building. You're welcome to read it, and I think you'd be amazed at how professional and how detailed that report is to provide these conclusions that the Wolf Branch Creek, the basin, the sink, really must be protected, not only for us, but for anybody that lives in Lake County and anybody that would ride on Route 46 that don't want to enhance any flooding that may have there, and certainly anyone that is going to be drinking our drinking water that we can all agree needs to be protected. So we spent a lot of hours. We really had master researchers. Bill Wagner, college professor, he's very familiar with research. Boy, he did a great job. And Frank Iaquinto, he did a great job. And Ken Groves, these guys are tremendous researchers. And what we would have had to pay somebody to do this, I have no idea. And if you figure that Certainly they're professionals. You'd have to pay somebody at least $100, $150 an hour to do that, and they spent, a lot of time on that project. Another thing we did is that we wanted to share our message, so we scheduled meetings. When I said we called them one-on-ones or two-on-ones. So Ken Groves and Barry Crosby and myself and Frank and Bill, we met with all the city council members, we met with the city planner, we met with the mayor, we met with all the sitting members on the planning and zoning. We went through everything. We went through all the environmentals, we went through our PUD, and we have a feeling that our PUD was well written and should be defended, and we met with these individuals. They were very cordial and invited us, and we met in just one or two of us meeting with a council member. And this was all to educate the city members. And I think they were amazed at what we identified, what we found, what we researched. All right, let's move on to a different subject. We did a survey of our community. One of the things that Team A wanted to do that was very important to them was to get a feeling from our community from the standpoint of how does everybody feel about this? I know that nobody wants houses, but then what do you do about it? So we wanted to have questions answered. So Team A got together in small groups and came up with a series of questions to be answered and worked very hard to try to get a quorum or to get a representative sample of the community. This clicker is really slow. So there's 15 neighborhoods, and they were all canvassed. And when I say canvass, Greg Vogel was our leader on this project, and he got a lot of volunteers to walk the streets, to bang on the doors, to talk to people, to show them the questions, to answer questions, and to try to get as many responses as we could. And there were some homeowners that weren't there. They were up north or they were out of town. We went back a second time, a third time. We sent postcards to them. We tried everything possible to try to get a representative sample. When we finish this presentation, if there are any questions about the survey, Greg would be glad to tell you exactly how they put it together and some of the strategy of trying to get a representative sample. And when you look at this, and when you say that when you have 564 homeowners participated out of 827, 68%, anybody that's familiar with surveys, that most of the time surveys you're getting 5 or 10%. So we feel that this was quite representative, especially when we had people that would talk to homeowners and explain and answer questions about what the survey was about and what we were looking for and what they were interested in. So with that summary, 82% responded they would support an effort for the HOA to purchase the entire golf club. So, this was pretty important to Team A and to our committee. All of these activities, at this time, remember at this time, we were still under the mindset that there was going to be a plan submitted to the city to build in our community. So it started in March, and then the months went by, April, May, June, July, August, September. And each month we would check in with the city, and there was no plans submitted. So Along with this, in September, our committee, we made a request to the board to approve $17,000 for additional projects, 2 additional projects, and I'll explain exactly what they are and why they were important. This was all presented to the board at a qualified meeting with a quorum, and there were homeowners present. There was dialogue going back and forth. There was questions that were answered, but at the end of the meeting, there was $17,000 that was voted for our committee to use. So one of the projects I mentioned early on is that we wanted a restriction in the deed. We wanted a land use specialist, a land use attorney that would tell us how we go about putting a deed restriction when the golf course changes hands. So that if the golf course has changed hands a second or a third or a fourth time, that we wouldn't be back in this situation with being threatened to build additional houses in our community. So we did that research, and Barry Crosby was the leader on this, and we identified attorney Brent Spain, and he is familiar with the area. He's done work here locally. He's a specialist in land use. He is an attorney, and his retainer was $3,750. So we have worked off that retainer. Now, if we fast forward to mid-January, 10 months since the March 14th presentation, we're going to be in a different situation. If you remember, we had surveyors going through the community in late fall, and everybody thought it was imminent that there was going to be plans submitted, and then we came to January, and we feel that the golf group came to the same conclusion that we did. It would be very costly and difficult to permit. Remember, they can't just come in and build houses without consideration of where the stormwater is going to go. Can't go into our ponds because they would overwhelm our ponds. They would have to build additional retention ponds. Also, where would they build, and how would they build, and how would they do their setbacks? There was a lot of complications. And we're fortunate on our committee, we have a builder, Kurt Umholtz. Where's Kurt? Kurt's been valuable because, he's been kind of like, in football, they have in scrimmage, they practice, they have a quarterback that practices what the quarterback on the opposing team is going to be like when they get on the field. Well, that's what he did. He was the guy that if I was them, this is what I would do. So he game planned, and he kept coming back. They can't do this, they can't do that, they can't do this, and narrowed it down. And really the summary is they can't make a lot of money doing what they want to do. So we're very fortunate to have Kurt on our team and guide us from the builder's perspective on that. So then they shifted. The golf group contacted John Tomlinson. He's our main contact. Remember, he talks to Mrs. Della Russo. He talks to her key advisors. Well, they said, John, let's talk about selling the golf course facility. And so then that shifted from Team B. Team B was, they did all their environmental work and all their work on how to protect the PUD. And now things shifted back to Team A. And Team A's mission was, okay, let's go research and find golf management companies that are qualified for 2 things. One is, it was important for the board and for our committee to learn as much as we could about our community. So what we did is we researched and we found Greg Kristovich, who is a specialist, a golf course specialist. He's been in business for 35 years. He knows golf courses in Florida inside and out. And so we commissioned him to do a due diligence study. He came down, he spent time, he met with all the managers in the club, food and beverage managers, outside, golf course, went on the roof, looked at the air conditioning, looked at the pool, talked to the superintendent, looked at the pump, everything, all the facilities, and come up with a complete study. This was actually a 6-week project. There was a lot into it. He took a lot of pictures, a lot of photos, went through the kitchen, went through the freezer, looked at everything. So let's just go back. This says 17,000. This is not a new 17,000. This is just accounting on the 17,000 that I mentioned a few slides ago. So we committed $3,750 to Attorney Spain as a retainer that we would work off. I believe his fee was $375 per hour. And Greg Kristovich, his price, $2,500 plus incidentals for travel. And so if you look at that, we're within budget. So the $17,000 that the board voted to approve, that's where the money went. We're still engaged with Attorney Spain, and you will hear Greg Kristovich make his presentation in a few minutes when I'm finished. So the question I've heard from some people, well, how, we didn't know about this money, and it's all well documented. Everything was done at the board level. Everything was requested and approved by the board. If you look at the minutes, you will see how it was debated and how the decision was made, and those minutes are available. Now, if we look more recently, in June of 23, here we are, only a couple of months back, we're thinking they want to make a deal. The golf group wants to sell the club. So we had to think ahead because we didn't know how quickly things were going to go. The board wasn't going to meet in July. And so we requested an additional $20,000 that could be used for our land use attorney, for additional presentations that we might ask Greg Kristovich to make, for the deed restrictions, document drafting, and hopefully for a closing attorney on the transaction. So they approved $20,000. And now I want to be very clear. This is only to be used for the sale of the facility. That if we need our land use attorney, if we need Greg, deed restrictions, so we have this money, and this money has not been committed other than we will pay Greg for his visit here tonight, and that will come out of those funds. But the remainder of the money is there in reserve if we need it. Now, T-Bay game planned and looked at all the alternatives of how do we get to a solution and solve our problem. So this is the option that Team A decided to work on and move forward with. Let's identify a private company that we feel is qualified to purchase a golf course. There were 6 different firms that Team A interviewed, and working along with our HOA to have this deed restriction. So each company that we talked to, we asked the question, would you be agreeable to having a deed restriction that if you buy the golf course as a golf course, that it will stay a golf course and there will be a deed restriction for that purpose. So each one of the 6 said no problem. So I want to be clear again on another point. The HOA is only a facilitator for a sale of the golf course. The HOA will not own, manage, or operate the golf course, food and beverage, pool, tennis, pickleball courts. We're only a facilitator. So in other words, we're putting together the HOA with a private company to create something that Mrs. Della Russo and the golf group will find acceptable. So with that, we identified Great Life Golf. John Brown, he's a very dynamic young guy, enthusiastic. He's got a great company. And this company, we feel, our committee, Team A, and our committee feels is a good fit for what we have to offer here at the Country Club of Mount Dora. They have, there was John Brown Golf, there was Great Life Golf, they merged, and John Brown became the CEO of that corporation. They manage many properties. They have properties out in the Midwest, out to Kansas City. They even have a property, I think, in South Dakota. They've got properties here in Florida. They have a regional manager. They have great facilities here in Florida. 2 of the local ones, Eagle Ridge up in Somerville near the Villages. So we wanted to see that. So myself and Barry and Greg, we went up there. Excuse me, we had lunch. We took a tour of the golf course. We saw the facility. We also went down to Orange Lake. We saw that facility. And we spent time with John Brown and his key managers. His managers spent time with us, explained about his company, showed us a video, showed us slides, talked about his company, talked about the vision of his company, which was all good and positive. John Brown personally and some of his key employees came down here. They toured all the facilities. They toured the golf course. They saw the irrigation system, the pumps. They talked to Pat Murphy, the superintendent, went in the clubhouse, talked to Attila, the pro, went through all the facilities, the kitchen, the bar, and we sat down in the room up front, the little terrace room with all the glass, and we talked for about 45 minutes. So John Brown is quite a guy and quite a company. Come on. All right. I'm not slow, this is. All right. So, there has been an offer made to purchase the golf course, the clubhouse, the pool, tennis, pickle courts by John Brown, Great Life Golf, from the current owner. Our HOA participation in this third-party purpose will be to ensure that there is a deed restriction. We've talked about that, a lot of redundancy, because we want something out of this. None of us want to go through this again. We've invested so much time into this, and we want this over. So as of today, Mrs. Della Russo and the golf group has not accepted this offer, this letter of intent. Negotiations continue. That is with John Tomlinson. And as I said, he's in regular contact. And I think the important thing is everything is cordial and low-key. When John calls up Mrs. Della Russo, she takes his call, they have pleasantries, and then they'll talk business. And the same thing with her two advisors. Everything's cordial. They will talk to each other. Obviously, her advisors have certain points that they want to make, but everything is low-key. And you have to appreciate we're doing everything without paying $350, $400 an hour for a lawyer to sit in the room and to be a part of these negotiations. So to this point, we have saved tens and tens of thousands of dollars for everything that we've done. All the Team B research and now all the negotiations, and fortunate to have John on our team that he can pick up the phone and talk to Mrs. Della Russo one-on-one. So as we go through this, we're going to have questions and answers at the end. Please, we really don't want to entertain any questions about price or financial considerations because it's really not appropriate. This is going to be on YouTube, and you know, if you're playing poker, do you take your cards and go like this? So please appreciate that. And so if this goes to fruition, what will be achieved? Prevent additional houses, retain the housing values, maintain the quality of life, prevent ongoing construction, noise, dust, confusion, and the golf course will operate as a golf course as we love it today. So we haven't changed. We have followed our mission statement right down the line. Stop any and all future housing in our community, find a buyer to operate as a golf course, and to put that deed restriction into it. So I showed this slide up there, and you know what I think about this slide? That's what I think. And this. So when you go out of the room and look, you know, sometimes there's a little bit of luck in things, and this little Wolf Branch Creek that nobody pays any attention to, and we look at our community, and we're right in the middle of this, and this certainly gives a big environmental reason why not to do anything. And those ponds that you see when you're playing golf, you might think they were put there for strategy on the golf course, but they were put there primarily for stormwater control. And that in our community, we do have some areas that are a little prone to flooding that are designated under the FEMA flood zone, right there at the water range and at the beginning of Andover. And there are a few other areas, but for the most part, our community drains pretty well. And the ponds might get high. There has been flooding in the Pinehurst Pond between Pinehurst and Laurel Ridge. We actually have a famous photo of Larry Reichert in a canoe or a kayak. And that only lasted for a day or two and then went down. Not Larry, but I mean the water. So this was that famous statement. We have builders lined up to spend 10 or 12 million. That's what I think of that. So seriously, our best advice, please support the club. Go to the club, spend money, buy drinks, buy food, go to the events. If you have a neighbor that's not a member of the club, please join the club, because it's really important at this time. The club is doing well. The club is positive as far as cash flow. As long as the club retains earning and is positive cash flow, that is good for us moving forward. It's good, it'll be good for the new owner, but I think it's good for future negotiations, how we can complete this deal. So please continue to support the club. So we've worked a lot of hours on this. The pay is great. So, but you know, it's 14 of us, plus it's the board members. We love this community. You know, we've got a great board. We've got a great president in Rick Bridges, who I think he spends more time at the club than anybody. And I'll point this out, the statement there, that of course we have a land use attorney that we put a retainer $3,750. But besides that, and besides what we've paid Greg Kristovich, we have done this basically within our committees. And if you're going to pay a lawyer $400, $350 an hour, that builds up really quick. And if you're going to hire a researcher, if you had a legal firm where you were going to have one of the junior staff go to the county library or the county seat and do what Frank Iaquinto and Bill Wagner did and Chuck Snyder did and Ken Groves did, those $200 an hour or $150 an hour, whatever they would pay, that would build up fast. And believe me, these guys all did a great job. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Greg Kristovich. He's a really extremely knowledgeable guy. He, as I mentioned before, he knows Florida golf courses inside and out. So I'll turn it over to him. You got a slow. I'm showing him the slow device.
Hopefully I won't have nearly as much trouble with the clicker as Rich did. Thank you, Rich. Good evening, everyone. I'm sure you're probably feeling like you're in church after a long sermon and all of a sudden there's a guest speaker comes up, right? I'll try not to. Good laugh there at the end. Thanks. Pleasure to be here tonight. Thanks. And nice to see a good crowd in the room. Before I get started on my objective report, I thought I'd share with you. I wrote an article for a magazine called Common Ground. It's actually a magazine for the Community Association Institute. Jake is probably familiar with that. He's probably a member. But it's like 5 years ago, and it talked about how, as a group of homeowners with a golf course country club amenity inside your community, what are some of the things you can do to sort of protect your quality of life and your real estate values. And that last slide was exactly what you do, you know. In your case, you've gone above and beyond. One of the things I wrote about was, you know, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. So if your golf course owner is the enemy, you better understand what they're doing. But you've done a great job of staying cordial and keeping things above board and contributing to their well-being too. So good for you. Granted, we're objective. We do a lot of this work, but we're also very passionate about seeing golf courses and country club communities succeed. We've done quite a bit of work on those in the last 3 to 5 years since this has become a much more common thing. And to your point about a golf course that closes, you may be familiar with the Legends Country Club over in Claremont and the Stony Brook West Golf Course in Winter Garden. You know, they both shut down and were gone and forgotten, and now the burden of recovering those country clubs has fallen on the homeowners who maybe unfortunately weren't as proactive with keeping them alive. So great committee, great group. I know that you're not looking for pats on the back, but you guys are very fortunate, did the right thing by mobilizing. I was reading a newspaper article this morning, and I wanted to pull up a quick clip from that about a golf course over in Palm Bay, which is a couple hours south and east of here, called the Majors Golf Club, and it shut down oh gosh, it's been several months ago, and one of the residents basically said, I'd be really disappointed in all of us if we just let it happen, which meant this golf course being overgrown. And to look back maybe 5 years and say, we used to have a beautiful golf course and now it's gone because we didn't do anything. Glad you're not in that position, that situation. So, as the guys have said, our firm based in Jacksonville, I'm a native Floridian. I've spent 35 years in the club business, everything from managing private clubs to multi-unit management with large golf management companies. Our company's been around for 12 years, and we've done a ton of consulting and brokerage and operational and physical asset assessments all over the country, but have quite a bit of experience here in Florida. In fact, we did a similar exercise for the Plantation Golf Club down in Leesburg a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, they didn't have as creative a solution as you folks did, so the HOA opted to buy the club. But they're doing well. They were at serious risk of their golf courses. They have 36 holes closing, and so there are some good success stories out there. But knowing what you've got in terms of your facilities, your market position, and all the things that are under the hood and behind the curtain are very important for everyone to know, not just you as a homeowners association, but your buyer partner as well. Okay? Here we go, Rich. Okay. So the purpose of the study was to summarize the observations and conclusions in our report. Current physical conditions, what's going on at the club in all areas. I did go on the roof. I can attest to that. Day-to-day operations, we spent some time there in the club to just see how it was operating, and as Rich mentioned, we spent quite a bit of time with the folks there, in some cases on the ground and in some cases on the phone with them, so as not to interrupt their day. We took a good hard look at the club's competitive market position, went to all your competing clubs, did a lot of online research, looked at reviews to figure out just where Country Club of Mount Dora stands in its competitive marketplace. Historical and projected financial performance. The majority of the time that we spent on this project was securing all the due diligence information from your current ownership group. And I will say Jack Gleason and the team at the golf group were extremely helpful. We asked for a lot of stuff, and they were very diligent in getting it to us. And as you can imagine, a lot of it's confidential. The board and the committee signed an NDA to make sure that they knew that none of this information was going to be released. But we wanted to make sure we understood how the club's been doing, and then help the board and the committee understand, and your buyer partner understand, what the future might look like. And then finally, every assessment, every valuation of a country club asset requires a good hard look at deferred maintenance and capital improvements. Some of those out there are fairly obvious. Some of them you never see because you may never have been in the kitchen or on the roof or in the pump house. So we did a thorough investigation there as well. As Rich said, it was a 6-week process that included on-site evaluation, photo library of existing conditions, historical information, as I mentioned, including past and current membership offerings. Kudos to the club for trying to increase and grow membership at Mr. Delarusso's request. Most clubs wouldn't have done that. Several meetings and phone conferences with the AdHoc committee members. Good, humble group of guys and gals. I tell you, you're fortunate to have them working for you. And then club staff and golf group representatives, Jack Gleason and Vicki Jones as the off-site controller. And spent a good amount of time with Pat Murphy. In fact, I brought one of our agronomists up, and we spent a full day on the golf course and behind the curtain in the maintenance building, dug into the equipment, interviewed the mechanic. That's probably the biggest area we'll talk about in a minute that needs the most resources. And then finally, just a review of what the club's been doing from a marketing standpoint. The club's website, Facebook page, online reviews. If you've never Googled reviews on Mount Dora Country Club, do that. you'll be hopefully not pleasantly surprised, but the reviews online are great, from the events that are held there to the quality of the golf course conditions to service. I can tell you they don't match up well to the competitors around you. Eagle Dunes, Black Bear. In fact, everybody online seems to hate the owner of Black Bear. That's been a common theme. I'm not sure what's wrong with that guy, but it's not good for business. And the rate at the golf course is actually substantially higher than your competition, and that's because of the service and the conditions. Let me see if I can go back here for a second, because I think I missed one. And then finally, I mentioned the due diligence. There's probably a 200 item checklist that we use to cover everything from licenses to water use permits to title work, looking back to see if there's liens on the property. In fact, our company's done a handful of due diligence exercises for the Brown Golf Group in conjunction with 2 properties they purchased from an institutional owner up in Jacksonville, Florida. So John will be real pleased to know that all his work is done. In fact, John's dad, John Sr., we were his exclusive brokerage and due diligence assessment firm for many years, just because of the thoroughness of the work that we did. Not trying to blow my horn, just saying everybody knows us. So one of the things we wanted to take a look at and highlight for the committee was, if you've ever heard of a SWOT analysis, come on baby, you can do it. Got to go back to the last slide. There it is. Wanted to highlight the strengths of the club in our minds and as a result of our research, but great community. You've heard that from Rich. You live here. Brand stability. I use the term brand as, what do people think when you say you live at the Country Club of Mount Dora? Always positive. And a long-standing positive reputation over the past 30 years. Denise will tell you real estate value has been very stable, quality of life. You can just drive in there. The first thing I noticed was all the flags, and I'm not sure whose job that was, but it was fantastic. I'm a longtime patriot. My dad was a World War II vet. What more can you ask for? You just don't see that anymore. Or you see one flag at the clubhouse that's rotting off the pole, right? So variety and quality of homes, a lot of different product there, and of course the country club amenities. When I first drove in, and I'd watched the YouTube and heard the, whatever you called that presentation in the parking lot, the first thing I thought of, what came to mind was, boy, this place is going to be beat up. It's not going to look very good. And resources have probably already been choked off. And I came down and I hit some balls and had a Coke in the restaurant. Nobody knew who I was, and I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, you know what, this place isn't bad off at all. So a lot of good things going for you. To sum it up, club and community are kind of known for their hospitality, southern charm, pride, and community service. Great place. I have to confess, my in-laws used to be members at the country club. My father-in-law doesn't play golf anymore, but they live in Eustis, so I'm not going to tell you who they are, but don't want to hang them out to dry. They know I'm here tonight, too. But they loved it, and they still dine there and have had, I'm sure there are probably plenty of you in the room here are friends with them. Club, very presentable from a curb appeal standpoint. Big deal for me. Drive in, look good, lawn cut, signs looking nice. Mentioned the flags. Clubhouse is clean. You go behind the curtain. Kitchens pass health inspections with flying colors. A lot of pride with the staff there. You can tell they really care about the place and how it looks every day when they come in. Financially, what do the numbers look like? Pretty good. COVID obviously provided a huge boost to the golf industry nationally. For those of us here in Florida with a golfing governor, we probably did even better. But the COVID sort of boost that everybody talks about has really not gone away. even year to date in 2023, the industry data sources are saying that rounds played and country club participation and membership levels are all still fairly high. I personally think that was probably a trend that was going to happen anyway. I think COVID just accelerated it. So you can see here from the slide, the club over the last 3 years has grown in rounds of golf. More importantly, the revenue per round, which is the price that they're getting for golf and associated expenditures. You're looking over a 2-year period at 10-12% in rounds and even more in revenue. 3 years is a trend, right? That's not just a hiccup, that's a trend. So in forecasting forward, if in fact the quality of the facilities, service, deferred maintenance, all of that is addressed, in our opinion, and again, based on your competitive market, the future looks bright. And I think that's what's prompted the Brown Group to take a good hard look at buying the club. Overall, again, subjectively, staff super friendly, professional, helpful. Again, a lot of folks didn't know who I was, but I did see interactions between the staff and all of you, and it just seems like a family, right? I mean, everybody knows who you are, and hopefully whatever you like to drink is on the bar before your fanny hits the chair. So great club environment, good group. Here's a sort of a one-pager, and you're going to see this, I think, tomorrow on the website, so you don't have to spend too much time on this, but there's 517 members total. This was as of May 25th. Got a lot of categories here, which most clubs would like to sort of slim down. That's not going to be your problem and your challenge, but with all the growth in the area, the development adjoining the country club, I see a world of possibilities in terms of growing this membership, and the daily fee component. Again, very popular golf course with players from all over the area, including golf groups. I think the club last year did about 2,200 rounds in just group play, whether it's local seniors that kind of play around or tournaments that the club's hosted. Good, healthy membership. Opportunities. Number one is significant capital needs, most notably in the golf maintenance area. You had a golf irrigation pump failure. It actually was timed with my visit back in April, and the golf course and the community, were kind of browning out because the pump was broken. You need 2 of those, right? If one breaks, you kind of need a backup. So we'll give you a little bit more of a blow-by-blow, but most of the maintenance equipment is beyond its useful life. I'd liken it to the lawnmower that just doesn't run anymore, for those of you that are still doing that. Cart paths, bunker work, bridge repairs, some of which have been addressed, but there are several out there that need work. And at some point in time, the greens out there are 30 years old. This is Rich's expertise, but it's amazing the job that Pat and his team have done out there with that golf course and with what they've had to work with. It really is phenomenal. Again, golf course conditions were good, but we could tell that there was a little bit of an irrigation problem going on. But need more labor probably if you're going to get the golf course to stay competitive and even come up a few notches. So maybe adding a few folks. I dare say that pay scales in Lake County are a little different than they are in Duval and St. Johns County and some of the other places that we work, but you're getting a heck of a bargain for what you're paying your folks here, which speaks again to their loyalty. Moderate amount of deferred maintenance, knowing that it's 30 years old. Place is in pretty good shape. I mean, obviously pickleball is newer than swimming pool and work has been done there, but it's a little tired on the outside and on the inside. Parking lot's going to need some work in a year or two. The roof is original equipment other than some work that was done on the flat roof a couple years ago. And let's not forget the interior, could be spruced up a little bit and in with the times. So Overall outlook, country club, good shape. If I was underwriting this for a loan, although you can't, it's awfully hard to get a loan these days for a golf course, but underwriting this for any buyer, my view would be it's pretty sustainable, and quality of the stability and the stability of the community overall is what's going to carry the day, in addition to all the growth around us. And no new golf coming too, by the way, not in this neck of the woods. You've seen Mount Plymouth, the club over in Apopka, long gone, Errol Estates. Don't know that we'll see many more closures with this COVID boost, but you're not going to see a new golf course get built in the area. We mapped out the next 4 years of capital, sort of like a mini reserve study, and estimated it out to be about $2 million for the list of things that you see there that I've kind of already talked about. We priced the maintenance equipment at a little under $500,000, and that's obviously an ongoing need over time. Irrigation pump station, probably $200,000 to $300,000. So Brown Group's well aware of this. Rich mentioned that they toured the facility and saw everything, and they're still pretty excited and interested, and to the extent that they made an offer. So those are basically sort of the challenges. Specifics of our work: all owner-provided proprietary documents. We didn't get 2 things that we asked for because they asked that those remain confidential. They were mainly personnel related until there was a contract in place, and then they'll provide that. Otherwise, everything else that's listed there, and we did determine that the club was compliant with all their inspections, license requirements, permits, etc., as of June 1. On the environmental side, while there was no observable evidence of any environmental deficiencies, we would certainly recommend, and I'm sure Brown will do this, is a phase 1 environmental site assessment, just to make sure. You got an old property here. There was never an underground storage tank or anything like that, but you just want to make sure that everything's clean. Zoning all compliant. These guys are crazy to think that they could get a PUD modified. In fact, if you remember or paid any attention to the plan over at Errol, I mean, those guys spent 6 years trying to get that thing redeveloped down from 27 holes to 18 holes, and they gave up. They're long gone. Imagine having a home there. Property taxes, tangible taxes, all paid for 2022. What we did was put together a Google Drive, which has all the due diligence documents that we collected, and that's on file with the committee. And we'll, again, make the process a lot easier for the Brown golf guys if, in fact, they move forward. We've already got that assembled for them. Okay, it'll just be a matter of updating. Boundary survey reportedly completed. I think many of you may have seen the stakes in the ground last spring when they were talking about redevelopment, but we haven't received the survey, but they said that they would provide that. There are no pending or past legal actions. We did all the insurance loss runs to see if there were any claims of any significance. None, other than a couple of slip and falls or trips. And we did have a list of additional recommended inspections that we thought were appropriate. Some of these won't cost anything. You can get a roofer out there to tell you need a new roof. He's probably looking to get the job. Mechanical, electrical, plumbing be a good idea too, and the club already uses an electrician and some other specialists, so to get them out there and do an assessment. Same with the HVAC, although I personally know a little bit about AC units. Probably half of them are under 5 years, in pretty good shape. Sewer is always one of those question marks, but if you're not having any problems in the community, likely not having any at the club. Swimming pool is maintained by a contractor. Would just want to report from them. I did look at the pool equipment. It's in pretty good shape, as is the pool. Solar panels, not a specialist in that regard, so it might be good to get somebody out and look at those. And then there are 2 ponds out there that have liners in them, and it would probably be a good idea to get somebody out who specializes in that field to make sure those liners are in decent shape, or not, and at least know what you're dealing with. They can be very expensive, and you don't want to have a liner failure, particularly in your irrigation pond, because that's where all your water's held. And then on the agronomy side, and Brown's awfully good at this, is just making sure the soil, water, and tissue testing samples are up to date to understand what the agronomy kind of looks like. Again, that's Rich's territory. So not a, let's talk about this last slide here. Good asset. I've seen 100 times worse. Not much better for the age of this property. I could take you down the road to some places that just are probably a couple years away from being financially not viable, just because of all the deferred maintenance that's required. So that leads me to kind of putting my broker hat on for a minute. What's this thing worth, right? So typically golf assets are selling at 6 to 8 times net income. To make it easy on you, if a club's making $100,000, it might be worth $600,000 to $800,000. Okay, based on the net income reported historically and what we've projected going forward, at a 7 times, we'll pick a number in the middle between 6 and 8, at a 7 times net income, which is about a 14.5% return on investment if you want to back into it that way. If I told you were going to buy a golf course and make 15%, you'd probably be, okay, that's better than buying a strip mall or something. It's worth somewhere between 2.2 and 2.9 million. If I put it up for sale tomorrow, most golf course buyers are going to do the same work that we did and look at the numbers and say somewhere in that range. Things that drag it down are huge amounts of deferred maintenance, lousy market position, deteriorating community. You don't have any of that stuff going on. So if anything, the Country Club of Mount Dora is probably a more attractive asset than one that, is sort of going backwards. To illustrate some recent comparable sales, there's a club up in Deer Creek, in Jacksonville Deer Creek Country Club. I actually sold this club to a group of homeowners 2 years ago for $1.6 million, and it was seriously in distress. I mean, they literally bought the club to save it, and they just sold it for $2.8 million. That was about an 8 times net income. They turned the club around. They sold a bunch of new memberships, raised a lot of capital, and reinvested it in, and it was a great story. Now it's owned by a company called Heritage Golf, which is a similar outfit to Brown Golf. DeBerry Country Club, just up the road, sold about 2 years ago for $3 million, 8.3 times net income. Nice club, nice community, very stable, looks a lot like here. And then Capri Isles Golf Club down in Venice sold last year for $2.4 million, a little under 6 times net income. So you can see, if I sort of poked pins in a graph there, that Country Club Mount Dora would probably fit in. All three pretty comparable assets in terms of membership, community, gross revenues, net income. Okay. End of my show. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Now we get to the question and answers. I see some people leaving. You don't want to ask any questions? Okay. All right, so the way we're going to do this, we've got 2 microphones here, and during this period, again, please don't ask questions about price or money or any of that. We would appreciate that. And be respectful of the committee. But if there are questions, we have our committee members here. So are there any questions? You want to come up and ask a question? is that, do we need to turn it on?
Come get this one.
I don't know, is that working? We have our AV.
Yep, right here. All right, you the first step? All right, here you go.
Thank you. Hello? Okay, guess we're good enough. There you go. Thank you very much. I'm Lindley DeVille. I've been HOA president. I've been everything else in the club. And for HOA, we've been here 20-something years. I had a thought, if this John Brown is so great, and he and Mrs. Della Russo can't agree with an amount that maybe some of us could supplement, or the HOA could fill and make up the difference. I don't know the legalities of that.
I'll ask Barry Crosby to answer that.
Oh, he's in another account. No.
The intent was, if the HOA, the supplement, Lindley, as you mentioned, that would be, if the HOA were to do type of supplement to make a deal, that's where we're getting our deed restrictions. That's the protections we are putting in. So if the HOA decides to put in dollars to make the amount agreeable for sale, the HOA dollars are ensuring a deed restriction so that the property could never be built on. And that was one of the two reasons we engaged the services of Attorney Spain, the land use attorney. The first one was to understand the PUD and could they build here. And the second one was how do we protect so that nobody ever builds a house in somebody's backyard that is currently a golf course or a pond. It's feasible, and I would think as part of Rich's presentation, that was one of the things he had mentioned was the deed restriction. The thing is that would, the HOA, that's where the HOA would come in, would be supplement. And as Rich mentioned, of the half a dozen or so that Team A had researched different potential golf course ownerships, of those, they were all aware that it would, a deed restriction if they were looking, and every one of them understood.
Question over on this side.
Mic's not working. It's all right, I can yell.
Try it.
No,
Try it again, that one's working.
Oh, it is now, okay. Is my turn? Okay.
could you state your name?
My name is Lloyd Miller. I've been here for 3 years in the community and I love it.
What? Say your name again.
Lloyd Miller.
Okay.
I live on Falconbridge, one little street. I have a tremendous appreciation for the environmental concerns of Wolf Creek and all of that, and we seem to be not maxing it out, but at least using it to its full capabilities. I'm concerned about the other community just north of us that has been proposed, is that going to be a possibly done community given the strain it may put on Wolf Creek? Only because that seems like it's going to be another 1,000 homes. That's my only concern. I don't know.
I think during our research, the community, if you're talking about the one on 441, the Orange Groves,
Yeah.
that leaches, or whatever you want to call it, to Lock 11.
Okay, so that's not even part of it, Wolf Creek.
Right, it goes the other way.
Okay,
I remember
that's all.
that as part of the city meetings.
Okay, that's all I needed to know.
Or
Thank you.
and then off to Lake Joanne after that.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm Dwayne Terlinden, and I am a newbie. My wife Lorraine and I moved here after the parking lot fiasco. So we missed out on all the fun. But I just want to say that I've met and know many of you, and I'm impressed with the work that has been done behind the scenes for all of us homeowners here. I had no idea. And Rich, on behalf of you and Barry and Ken and everyone else, I just want to say thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joe Huey, and my wife Mary just recently moved 10 months ago from Miami. We are delighted to be here, and we're glad that you invited us over. I just have one question regarding the deed restriction. I've never heard of that before, but I presume that the way that's drafted will basically prevent indefinitely from anything to be built on there, or how is that particularly worded? Not that I want to get into legal terms. I'm not an attorney, but I'm curious.
Barry?
Yeah. I'm not an attorney either, but I've been talking with them a lot. The way the deed restriction works is two different ways. One is called a conservation easement that's placed on the properties, which doesn't allow, and the other one, a deed restrictions, which states it's recorded at the time of closing. So when the seller and the buyer meet at the courthouse with the money, the new deed is going to restrict any building. Now, it can be done a number of ways, and it has not been decided. There's a laundry list of ways to do it, okay? One example would be that the only way it could happen would, and I'll use this only as an example, it is nothing more than that, okay? But say somebody wanted to propose building houses here, okay, you would have to have, say, a vote of 827 houses, and of that, say 80%, you would set your parameters as part of the restriction. There's another way that just basically says no homes could be built in there, or no structures could be built wherever there is any current golf course holes. So it's very specific, and it's recorded in the deed, and it stays with the deed going forward, is how it was explained to me.
Hopefully it's the latter. Thank you.
Yeah, and as I said, there are numerous ways to do it, and that's why we have the attorney to represent us.
Does this go on here? Oh, yeah. My name is Mary Ann Studoff, and I live in Laurel Ridge. I really didn't have that many questions. Most of my questions were just answered. But I wanted to also thank everybody involved. This presentation was so professional and very pleasant. Everything's been so professional, and I'm overwhelmed with all the effort that you all have put together voluntarily. I thank you all, both committees, all of you. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Ken Umloff, and my wife and I have been in at 1840 Edgewater for nearly 24 years. We love the community. My concern, my area of interest would be if the HOA has worked with the potential owner and we are trying to sweeten the deal by making the deed restriction with the HOA as a part member in this. I want to ensure that the HOA understands that we all get a vote in this, that it is, and I'm not sure what the requirements for an HOA vote would be, but I don't want our HOA board going forward without asking all of us what we think of it. Thank you so much.
Rick, where's Rick?
According to our bylaws, it is a decision that is made by the 5 HOA Board of Directors.
I think with that answer, you need to appreciate that all these, the board members, understand and represent everybody in our community. And any decision that is made for the collective good of the community. And we have spent a lot of time looking at all the different alternatives that would be the best fit for the community, not only as far as the company is concerned, the company that would buy the golf course, but as far as the economics of it. So, as Rick stated, within the bylaws, the HOA board has the ability to make a decision. Any other questions? I want to sincerely thank everybody for coming. You know, there was a lot of questions going into this. How come there wasn't more information? But remember, we've identified all the board meetings, all our meetings, all the Friday meetings. There was 36 times that we've tried to educate, provide information on what was being done. So this is just another attempt. I'm sure there will be another time for us to meet in the future, and I hope that will be a time of joy. Thank you. One more point of business. Because this is official a meeting, I need a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn, second. All right. All in favor? Meeting over. Thank you.